There's a guy named Dave. He's 63 years old, lives outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and he just retired after 41 years as an operations manager. Over the course of his career, Dave earned roughly $2.1 million. Not all at once, slowly, paycheck after paycheck, direct deposit after direct deposit. $2 million flowed through his hands across 4 decades. And right now, Dave has $43,000 in his retirement account. $43,000 after 41 years. That's it. That's the whole thing. He's looking at Social Security checks of about $2,071 a month, which is the national average. And he's trying to figure out how to make that cover rent, groceries, prescriptions, and everything else for the rest of his life. Here's what gets me. Dave wasn't lazy. He wasn't irresponsible. He showed up. He did everything he was told to do. Work hard, pay your bills, save what you can, retire at 65. He followed the script perfectly. And the script failed him. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're working, you're earning, money comes in, money goes out, and at the end of the month, there's almost nothing left. You know you're supposed to be saving, but the math just never seems to work. And nobody, not your parents, not your school, not your employer, ever sat you down and showed you one specific number that could have changed everything. If you've ever felt like you're running as fast as you can and somehow falling behind, smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because what I'm about to show you is the single most important calculation in personal finance that almost nobody ever does. Here's the thing most people get wrong about retirement. They think it's an age. You turn 65, you stop working, you collect Social Security, and somehow it all works out. But retirement isn't an age. It never was. Retirement is a number, a very specific number, and most people have never calculated it. There's a concept for this. It's called the wealth replacement rate, and the idea has been developed across decades of research from economists and financial planners, but the clearest formulation comes from a landmark book called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, first published in 1992. The basic idea is this. At what point does the income generated by your investments fully replace the income generated by your labor? That's your number. That's the finish line, and it's different for every single person. And here's what makes it so powerful. It's not a dream. It's not a mindset. It's pure math. It's calculable, trackable, and for anyone who actually does the work, it is achievable. But most people never even attempt the calculation. They go their entire lives chasing a feeling of enough without ever defining what enough actually means in dollars. A 2024 survey by Schwab found that Americans believe they need $1.26 million to retire comfortably. But that's just a feeling. It's a number pulled from the air, not from their actual spending. And feelings don't build wealth. Numbers do. Let me show you what I mean with a real story. Sarah is 34, works in marketing in Austin, Texas, makes $72,000 a year. She's got about $18,000 in a 401k that she rarely thinks about. She spends roughly $4,800 a month, which is $57,600 a year. Sarah has never calculated her wealth replacement rate. She's never sat down and figured out the exact portfolio size that would make work optional for her specific life. If you asked Sarah how much money she needs to retire, she'd probably say something like, $1 million, I guess? She'd be guessing. And that guess, that vague, undefined, floating target, is exactly why most people never get there. Because you can't hit a target you haven't defined. You can't close a gap you've never measured. You can't win a race when nobody told you where the finish line is. But here's what actually happens when you do the math. Sarah's annual expenses are $57,600. At a 4% safe withdrawal rate, which is the standard benchmark from the Trinity study for how much you can sustainably pull from a diversified portfolio each year without running out of money, Sarah needs $1,440,000 invested to replace her income entirely. That's her number, $1.44 million. Not a vague aspiration, a calculable destination. And once she knows it, every dollar she earns and every dollar she spends takes on a completely different meaning. Let's start with the baseline reality of what's actually happening in America right now, because the numbers are genuinely alarming. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household spent $78,535 in 2024. That's $6,545 every single month. Housing alone eats up 33.4% of that. Transportation takes another 17%. Food takes 12.9%. Before you've even thought about saving a single dollar, the basics of existing in this country consume nearly 2/3 of everything you make. Now, here's what most people don't realize about how that spending connects to the number you actually need. Math breakdown number 1, the true cost of average American spending. Average annual household spending, $78,535, divided by 0.04, the 4% rule, equals $1,963,375. That's the number. If you're an average American household with average expenses, you need nearly $2 million invested to make work optional. Let that sink in. Now let's look at what the average American actually has saved. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the most recent comprehensive data available, the median retirement savings for all American households is $87,000. The median for households aged 55 to 64, people who are supposed to be approaching retirement, is $185,000. $185,000 versus $1,963,375. That's a gap of $1.78 million. That's not a crack in the foundation. That's the foundation missing entirely. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because the question isn't just whether people are saving enough. The question is whether they ever had a chance. Math breakdown number 2, the Lifetime Earnings Disappearing Act. The average American will earn approximately $1.7 to $2.1 million over a working lifetime, according to data from the Social Security Administration and Georgetown University's Center on Education and the Workforce. Let's use $1.85 million as our midpoint, which is the median for men according to the SSA's detailed earnings records. $1,850,000 in lifetime earnings, minus roughly 30% in federal, state, and payroll taxes, minus $555,000, equals $1,995,000 net. From that $1,295,000 in after-tax earnings, minus $1,053,000 in housing at $2,193 per month for 40 years, minus $312,000 in transportation at $650 per month for 40 years. That leaves roughly negative $358,000. Read that again. After taxes and just 3 categories of spending, housing, transportation, and food, the average American is already $358,000 in the hole. Before healthcare, before insurance, before childcare, before anything resembling a life. The math was broken before you even started. And it gets worse. A 2018 study from the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center at George Washington University, led by Anna Maria Lusardi, found that 36% of working-age Americans could not come up with $2,000 in 30 days to cover an emergency. Not $20,000, not $200,000, $2,000. These aren't people making minimum wage. Nearly 30% of households earning between $50,000 and $75,000 a year were also financially fragile. Think about that for a second. 1 in 3 Americans earning a middle-class income can't survive a surprise car repair without going into debt. These are people with jobs, with paychecks, with direct deposits hitting their accounts every 2 weeks, and a broken transmission could send them spiraling. Not because they're bad with money, because the math between what life costs and what work pays has gotten impossibly tight. But here's what nobody talks about. The math isn't just broken for people starting from zero. It's broken even for people who think they're doing it right. Math breakdown number 3, the 401k illusion. Let's say you're doing better than average. You've been contributing to your 401k for 20 years. You're 50 years old. According to Fidelity's Q4 data based on 24.5 million participants, the average 401k balance for people in their 50s is about $592,000. Sounds decent, right? Let's break it down. $592,000 in your 401k at age 50. At 4% withdrawal rate, that generates $23,680 per year. That's $1,973 per month. Average monthly expenses for your age group, roughly $6,545. Gap, $4,572 per month. You're 15 years from traditional retirement age. You need to close a $4,572 monthly gap. And the average person's solution? Keep doing the same thing they've been doing and hope for the best. But here's what actually happens over those 15 years if you just coast. $592,000 growing at 8% annually for 15 years with no additional contributions becomes approximately $1,878,000. At 4%, that generates $75,120 per year, or $6,260 per month. You'd be close to covering your expenses, but still short by about $285 per month. And that's the average 401k balance, which is skewed dramatically upward by high earners. The median 401k balance for people in their 50s? $252,850. Let's run that. $252,850 growing at 8% for 15 years with zero additional contributions, roughly $801,430. At 4%, that's $32,057 per year. That's $2,671 per month. Gap from average expenses, $3,874 per month short. That's the reality for a typical American worker in their 50s. They'd retire with a $3,874 monthly shortfall. That's not a comfortable retirement, that's a crisis. Now here's the part that keeps me up at night. There's something called the retirement earnings gap, and it works like this. Math breakdown number 4, what Social Security actually covers. According to the Social Security Administration, the average monthly retirement benefit as of January 2026 is $2,071. Let's look at what that actually buys. $2,071 per month, minus average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the U.S., $1,200, conservative estimate. Minus Medicare Part B premium, 2025, $185. Minus average grocery spending for one person, $375. Minus utilities and phone, $250. Minus basic transportation, $200. Equals minus $139 per month. That's not a typo. Social Security alone puts you $139 in the red every single month. And that's where the one-bedroom apartment, no car payment, no prescriptions beyond Medicare, no dental work, no emergencies, no life. That $2,071 doesn't cover the basics. A 2025 report from the National Institute on Retirement Security found that the median retirement savings for all employed adults aged 21 to 64 is just $955. $955. And the share of seniors living in poverty climbed to 15% in 2024, the highest rate among all age groups according to census data. This is where I need to be honest about something. The numbers I just showed you aren't outliers. They aren't worst-case scenarios. They're the average. They're what happens to most people. And the reason it happens is that nobody ever shows you the one number that could change the entire trajectory. But here's where it gets really dark. Because the system doesn't just fail to teach you the number. It actively works against you reaching it. Math breakdown number 5. The cost of not knowing your number. Let's take two people. Both start working at 25. Both earn $60,000 a year. Both have the exact same expenses. The only difference, person A calculates their wealth replacement rate at age 25 and starts investing $500 a month into an S&P 500 index fund. Person B does what most people do, saves whatever is left at the end of the month, which averages about $100 a month. At age 55, after 30 years at the S&P 500's historical average of roughly 10% annually, person A, $500 a month times 30 years at 10% is approximately $1,130,000. At 4%, that's $45,200 per year, or $3,767 per month. Person B, $100 a month times 30 years at 10% is approximately $226,000. At 4%, $9,040 per year, or $753 per month. The difference is $904,000, nearly $1 million. Same salary, same job, same life. The only difference was that one person knew their number and worked backwards from it, and the other one didn't. Person A is free at 55. Person B has to work another decade, maybe longer. The cost of not knowing your number isn't money, it's time. It's years of your life. Here's a micro story that illustrates this perfectly. Meet James and Marcus. They both graduated from Georgia State in 2005 with accounting degrees. Both got jobs at mid-sized firms in Atlanta making $48,000 to start. James, during his senior year, took an elective on personal finance. One lecture covered compound interest and the 4% rule. He went home that night, calculated his number, and set up an automatic transfer of $400 a month into a Vanguard index fund. Marcus never took that class. He contributed 3% to his company 401k, enough to get the match, and figured he'd worry about retirement later. 20 years later, James has $306,000 invested, and his money generates $12,240 a year passively. He just got promoted to controller, but he knows that even if he got laid off tomorrow, he's halfway to his wealth replacement rate. He sleeps well. Marcus has about $89,000 in his 401k. His money generates $3,560 a year. He's 42 with 2 kids in middle school, and when he looks at the gap between where he is and where he needs to be, it paralyzes him. So he does what most people do. He doesn't look. One class, one number, one automatic transfer. That's the distance between sleeping well and lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering if you'll ever be able to stop working. And here's what changes everything about understanding this math. Most people think of compound interest as a nice bonus, something that adds a little bit on top of your savings. But compound interest isn't a bonus, it's the entire engine. Let me show you something that'll change how you see every dollar you spend. Math breakdown number 6. The true cost of every purchase. When you buy a $40,000 truck instead of a $25,000 truck, you're not just spending an extra $15,000. At 10% annual returns, here's what that $15,000 becomes if invested instead. $15,000 after 10 years equals $38,906. $15,000 after 20 years equals $100,912. $15,000 after 30 years equals $261,741. That truck upgrade didn't cost you $15,000. It cost you $261,741 over 30 years. That's $250,000. That's years of freedom. Every purchase you make has 2 prices, the sticker price and the freedom price. And most people only ever see the first one. This is math you can't unlearn. Once you understand that every dollar either moves you closer to your number or further away from it, you start seeing the world differently. A $200 a month subscription habit isn't $2,400 a year, it's $150,000 over 25 years at 10% returns. That's not entertainment, that's a down payment on freedom you're burning every single month. This isn't just bad luck. This isn't Marcus being irresponsible. This is a system that was designed to keep you running without a finish line. Think about it. You spend 12 years in school, 4 more in college if you go, 16 years of formal education, and in all those years, how many hours were dedicated to teaching you the single most important calculation for your financial life? How many teachers sat you down and said, here's your number, here's the math, here's how compound interest works, here's exactly how many years of work you can erase by starting now? 0. For most people, the answer is 0. And that's not an accident. The system relies on your ignorance of these mechanics. Credit card companies bank on you not understanding compound interest working against you. Student loan services depend on you not running the numbers on a 20-year repayment plan. The entire consumer economy is built on the assumption that you will spend everything you make and then borrow more. This is where I get genuinely frustrated. Because according to a study led by Professor Anna Maria Lusardi, now at Stanford, 30 to 40% of retirement wealth inequality in the United States can be explained by differences in financial knowledge alone. Not differences in income, not differences in inheritance, differences in understanding how money works. The system doesn't just fail to teach you the number, it punishes you for not knowing it. Every year you don't invest, you lose the most powerful force in finance, time, and you can't get it back. A 25-year-old who invests $500 a month will have roughly $1.13 million by age 55. A 35-year-old investing the same amount, about $414,000. 10 years of delay costs $716,000. That's not a penalty for being lazy, that's a penalty for not being taught. You're not broken for feeling overwhelmed by this. You're not financially illiterate because you're dumb. You're financially illiterate because the system never had any incentive to make you literate. Financially educated people spend less, save more, and borrow less. That's bad for the companies that profit from your spending, your debt, and your ignorance. In 5 years, the person who calculates their wealth replacement rate today will be in a fundamentally different financial position than the person who keeps winging it. In 10 years, the gap will be enormous. In 20 years, one of them will have options. The other will have Social Security and a prayer.
So what do you actually do with this information? The answer is not to panic. The answer is not to quit your job and move into a van. We have to be realistic. The answer is to calculate your number and then reverse engineer your entire financial life around closing the gap. Here's how. Strategy 1. The number audit. Before you do anything else, you need to know 3 things. Your actual monthly expenses, not what you think they are, what your bank statements say, your current investment balance, and the gap between where you are and your wealth replacement rate. Pull up 3 months of bank statements this weekend. Add up every dollar that went out. Multiply your monthly spending by 12, then multiply by 25. That's your number. Write it down. Put it on your bathroom mirror if you have to. Every financial decision you make from this point forward is about closing the distance between where you are and that number. Strategy 2. The 72-hour investment trigger. Within 72 hours of watching this video, set up an automatic monthly transfer into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Doesn't matter if it's $50 or $500. The amount matters less than the automation. Because here's the thing about human psychology. We're terrible at making the same good decision over and over again. Automation removes willpower from the equation. Every dollar you invest is 4 cents per year of passive income forever. $500 a month is $240 per year of passive income you didn't have before. That's a cell phone bill, covered, forever, by money you'll never touch. Strategy 3. The expense compression. Every $100 you eliminate from your monthly expenses does 2 things simultaneously. It frees up $100 more to invest and reduces your wealth replacement rate by $30,000. That's a double accelerant. 1 move, 2 effects. If you can cut $500 a month from your spending through negotiating bills, downsizing, cooking at home, or eliminating subscriptions you forgot you had, you've just reduced the amount you need to retire by $150,000 and added $500 a month to your investment fuel. That could shave 5 to 7 years off your timeline. Strategy 4. The income stack. Your job income has a ceiling, but investment income has no ceiling and no end date. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund that you redirect into investments accelerates your timeline exponentially, not linearly, exponentially, because compound interest rewards acceleration. Adding an extra $200 a month for 20 years at 10% doesn't just add $48,000 in contributions, it adds roughly $150,000 in total value.
The earlier you stack, the harder the math works in your favor. Look, I need to be honest with you. This journey is not fair. Someone starting at 45 with nothing saved faces a fundamentally harder climb than someone starting at 25. But harder doesn't mean impossible. It means the urgency is real. You're not irresponsible for not knowing this. You're not behind because you're lazy. You're behind because nobody told you there was a race, let alone showed you where the finish line was. But now you know. You have the number. The question isn't whether the math works. The math always works. The question is whether you're willing to let it work for you. If this video changed how you think about your financial future, share it with someone who's still guessing. We don't talk about this stuff enough, and the cost of silence is decades of unnecessary labor. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.